How did one day change the fate of Europe and end the ambitions of an emperor? With this thought, let us delve into the dawn of destiny, the day that marked a watershed moment in European history, the Battle of Waterloo. The year was 1815. Europe was in turmoil, caught in the throes of the Napoleonic Wars. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a battle that would decide the course of an entire continent. This was more than just a military confrontation. It was a struggle for supremacy, a fight to shape the destiny of nations. On one side stood Napoleon Bonaparte, a man whose name was synonymous with power, with ambition, with dominance. A man who had risen from the ranks to become Emperor of the French. Napoleon's strategic brilliance and indomitable will had brought him a string of victories. But Waterloo was to be his final gamble, his last bid for ultimate control over Europe. On the other side were two formidable opponents, each a titan in his own right. The Duke of Wellington, Arthur Wellesley, was a seasoned soldier and a master tactician. His cool-headed approach to warfare and his unshakable resolve had earned him respect and recognition. Alongside Wellington was Prussian Field Marshal Gebhard Leberecht von Blücher, a man known for his fiery spirit and relentless determination. Despite his advancing years, Blücher was a force to be reckoned with, a warrior who would stop at nothing to ensure victory. The stakes were high, the tension was palpable. The outcome of this battle would not just determine the victor of the war, but would also shape the geopolitical landscape of Europe for decades to come. It was a test of courage, of strategy, of resilience. As the sun rose on June 18, 1815, the fate of Europe hung in the balance. The stage was set, the actors poised, ready to play their part in this grand drama of history. Little did they know, they were about to participate in an event that would echo through the ages, a battle that would become a symbol of the end of an era, the dawn of a new destiny. In the early morning mist, two armies faced each other, ready for a battle that would decide the course of history. As the first rays of sun pierced the gloom, the stage was set for a classic clash of titans. On one side, Napoleon Bonaparte, a man who had conquered Europe, and on the other, the Allied forces, led by the Duke of Wellington, the Iron Duke, determined to halt the French advance. As the morning wore on, the battlefield came alive with the thunderous sound of cannon fire and the clash of steel. Napoleon, confident in his strategies, launched his first assault on the chateau of Hougoumont. It was a formidable fortress, held by the British and their allies, and it was here that the French met their first significant resistance. The French forces under the command of Napoleon's brother Jerome Bonaparte fiercely charged at Hougoumont, expecting a swift victory. But the British, led by Lieutenant Colonel James MacDonell, had other plans. They stood their ground, repelling wave after wave of French soldiers with unyielding determination. Despite being outnumbered, the British managed to hold Hougoumont. Their dogged defense acted as a thorn in Napoleon's side, diverting significant French resources away from the main battlefield. This successful defense proved to be a pivotal moment in the battle, although it was not immediately apparent to the commanders on the field. Meanwhile, the rest of the battlefield was a scene of chaos and carnage. The French and Allied forces clashed in a brutal, unrelenting struggle, each side trying to gain the upper hand. Amid the smoke and the noise, the strategies and tactics of the commanders were put to the ultimate test. By midday, the battle was far from decided, and a single decision could tip the scales. Little did they know, the pivotal moment was yet to come, and it would hinge on a place called La Haye-Sainte. But that's a story for another scene. For now, let's leave the battlefield in the hands of these titans, their fates intertwined in the dance of war. In the heat of the afternoon, Napoleon made a gamble that would either secure his victory or seal his fate. The midday sun blazed down on the battlefield, casting long shadows of soldiers, their faces etched with anticipation and fear. Napoleon, seeing that the Allied center appeared to be faltering, made the decision to launch his most formidable weapon, his elite Imperial Guard. These men were the crème de la crème of the French army, handpicked for their bravery and loyalty to the emperor. They were the cornerstone of Napoleon's military strategy, his ace in the hole, always held back until the decisive moment of battle. And in the late afternoon of June the 18th, 1815, that moment had come. Against the backdrop of cannon fire and the thunderous gallop of horse hooves, the Imperial Guard marched forward. The sight of these fearsome soldiers, their bayonets gleaming in the sunlight, was enough to send a shiver down the spine of the most seasoned warrior. But what they didn't know was that their commander, the Duke of Wellington, had a trick up his sleeve. Wellington had positioned his reserves behind the crest of a hill, out of sight of the French. As the Imperial Guard advanced, these hidden troops suddenly emerged, pouring a devastating volley of fire into the ranks of the French. This surprise counterattack took the Imperial Guard off guard, and for the first time in their storied history, they faltered. The shock of this reversal rippled through the French lines. The invincible Imperial Guard, the symbol of Napoleon's military genius, was in retreat. The sight of these elite soldiers fleeing the battlefield sent a wave of panic through the French army. The tide of battle had turned. With the defeat of his Imperial Guard, Napoleon's hopes of victory began to crumble. The man who had once held Europe in the palm of his hand was now on the brink of defeat. This was the turning point of the Battle of Waterloo, the moment when the fate of an emperor and the course of history hung in the balance. As the sun set, the once mighty French army was in retreat, and an era was coming to an end. In the late afternoon of that fateful day, the battle was still hanging in the balance. Napoleon, once the master of Europe, clung desperately to his last vestiges of power. But the arrival of the Prussian army led by Field Marshal Blucher turned the tide irrevocably against him. The Prussians, having marched tirelessly from the east, arrived just in time to support the beleaguered Allied forces. Their presence bolstered the morale of the Allies and added significant weight to their ranks. The French, already exhausted from hours of intense fighting, found themselves facing a rejuvenated enemy, now bolstered by fresh troops. Napoleon, in a last-ditch effort, sent his elite Imperial Guard, the pride of his army, into the fray. This was his final gamble, a desperate move to break the Allied line and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But the Guard, once considered invincible, fell before the combined might of the Allies and the Prussians. This was the moment when hope turned to despair for the French. Seeing his elite troops retreat, Napoleon realized the battle was lost. The emperor, once the master of his destiny, was now a pawn in the hands of fate. He was forced to flee the battlefield, leaving behind his dreams of a united Europe under French dominion. In the aftermath of the battle, Europe breathed a sigh of relief. The Napoleonic Wars, which had raged for more than a decade, were finally at an end. Napoleon, the man who had dominated the continent, was now a prisoner, destined to live out his days in exile on the remote island of St. Helena. Napoleon's reign as emperor was over, and the map of Europe was about to be redrawn. The Battle of Waterloo marked the end of an era, but it also heralded the dawn of a new age. An age where the balance of power in Europe would be determined not by the will of a single man, but by the collective will of nations. The Battle of Waterloo was more than just a military conflict. It was a turning point in European history. Its echoes reverberated through the corridors of time, shaping the contours of the world as we know it. The aftermath of this monumental clash saw the landscape of Europe being redrawn, not merely in terms of territory, but in the balance of power and the emergence of a new political order. Napoleon, the once formidable emperor who dreamt of a united Europe under his rule, was exiled to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, never to return. His dreams of European dominance were buried alongside him, marking the end of an era of relentless warfare and the beginning of a new epoch. In the wake of Waterloo, the Congress of Vienna convened to restore stability and order to a continent ravaged by years of conflict. The map of Europe was reshaped, with borders redrawn and nations reborn. This marked the start of what historians term as the Concert of Europe, a period of relative peace that lasted for almost half a century, a rarity in European history. But the legacy of Waterloo extends beyond the political sphere. It stirred a profound shift in the collective consciousness of Europe. The battle was a stark reminder of the human cost of ambition and the fickle nature of power. It underscored the importance of strategy over brute force, of unity over division, and of the indomitable spirit of men willing to fight for their beliefs. The echoes of Waterloo still resonate today, serving as a poignant reminder of the thin line between victory and defeat, the transient nature of power, and the enduring impact of collective action. It stands as a testament to the fact that the course of history can be altered in a single day, a single moment. And so, a single day did indeed change the fate of Europe, ending the ambitions of an emperor and setting the stage for the world we know today.